Welcome back to the Angry Man Podcast with Jason and Greg. So we know that David Benavidez has a fight coming up with Boo Andrade here in the next couple of weeks, which we're excited about and definitely plan to do a little bit more coverage on that in the next few weeks. But, they're doing some initial interviews. We haven't seen a whole lot from them. Some of these comments that we have from some of these guys haven't been the most, exciting comments, if you will, in regards to getting people excited for the fight, Jay. But one comment that David Benavidez made as a part of Fight Hub was interesting. And I do want us to come here and share it with the general public because I feel like people may have not caught this. But David Benavidez is actually willing to face Terence Crawford next in the event that he does not get the opportunity to fight Canelo Alvarez in the next 2-3 fights, whatever. We know that Terence Crawford has a fight coming up with Errol Spence because they have a rematch. But Terence Crawford has expressed desire to move up to 168 pounds and fight Canelo Alvarez, which I would assume then means that he's okay with being at 168 in general. And not only that, forcing the opportunity for the Canelo Alvarez fight. We know that Canelo doesn't necessarily have a whole lot of interest in making that fight right now, regardless of what people have to say in respect to Terence Crawford and his ability to sell tickets and generate interest in that fight. But if he were to move up and beat David Benavidez, immediately he would become the mandatory for the WBC. And David Benavidez... Mandatory. He would become the mandatory for the WBC. So I want to play this clip very quickly, Jay, so the people can hear what we heard so that they understand why we are saying what it is that we're saying. Jay, hear it go right here. Mr. David Benavidez with Fight Hub.
Since he's asking for the fight at 168, just curious, because he's calling out Canelo at 168. You're a 168 fighter. And I know it sounds crazy, but if he were to turn around and be like, hey, yeah, I'll fight David.
Oh, yeah, I'll be dope. I have a lot of respect for Terence Crawford. And just because I want to fight, if we would fight, doesn't mean we have hard feelings for each other. He's definitely a great fighter. I'd love to fight him.
That'd be crazy, man. Just the size difference wise and just seeing how him being at 147 wanting to go up and fight at 168. That's kind of nuts.
Yeah, to be honest, I would love to see him fight Terence Crawford. The one at 154, that would be a great fight and hopefully get it made because at the end of the day, I'm a fan of boxing and those are the fights I want to see.
Yep.
So David Benavidez said it would be dope. And just because he would want to fight him doesn't mean that he would not have respect for Terence Crawford. And I agree with that. And to be quite honest with you, that would be dope if Terence Crawford would be willing to move up to face David Benavidez. I mean, he seems to have a willingness to fight at 168. His coach believes that size and strength and all that stuff really doesn't play a real... I guess it doesn't dictate whether or not you will win the fight, if you will. It doesn't play a major part in the outcome of a fight. So with that being said, I would love to see Terence Crawford move up and face David Benavidez. I think that would be some G-ish, if you will. And it will force Canelo Alvarez into a fight with Terence Crawford. And like I mentioned before, we would be rooting for Terence Crawford in the event that he would take a David Benavidez fight. I don't know if he will actually be willing to do so, though. But it would definitely be something that would be, like I said, G-ish. Jay, what's your thoughts on that? David Benavidez, I didn't think he would say that he would be willing to face Terence Crawford. I thought he would just say, nah, I'm not interested in that fight because he's moving up. But clearly, he wouldn't mind catching that smoke with Terence Crawford. And maybe Crawford would entertain a fight like that since he's willing to move up to 168. So, Jay, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I like him taking that approach because basically it eliminates another competitor from getting the Canelo fight for him, because he said, he at first he didn't want to talk about it a little bit, but he also said I'd take the fight because, he has respect for Bud, but also he knows that knocking Bud out of the way, he should be solidified with the fight with Canelo. So that makes sense for him. But, we have one of our listeners, Terrence Best Videos, who said Bud would be crazy to take a fight with David Benavidez. So I wonder how other Bud fans feel about a matchup with David Benavidez and Bud Crawford, because this David Benavidez is the Mexican monster. He is, the boogeyman at 168, it seems these days now. So I wonder how the Bud fans are going to talk about that now as a possibility. Would Bud entertain that so he could definitely make sure he'll get that Canelo fight? So let's say he does. Benavidez handle business in a week or so. Spence and Bud fight January, February, they fight. Bud handles his business. They meet a little bit early summer. Then they could have a fight with Canelo end of the year. Now that Bud can definitely be in the mix for a Canelo fight that way. Like you said, he'll be as mandatory. So kind of like someone else was as mandatory, but never mind, I won't go there. But yeah, that'd be a good idea. I like David Benavidez entertaining it. He also said he'd rather see Bud fight Jermell Charlo, which is a closer to his weight class, and they already have beef anyway.
Yeah, and I know a lot of Terence Crawford fans will say that there's no money to be made in fighting David Benavidez. I would argue against that, considering the fact that we've heard a number of Terence Crawford fans say that Terence Crawford just did 700,000 pay-per-view buys with Errol Spence. They are crediting all of those buys to Terence Crawford, which means that a David Benavidez fight would do at least the same amount, if not more. Which means that with Terence Crawford being the star that they believe he is, he would probably get a 60-40 split. After the promoters and everything are paid, he would probably get something.
Yeah,
I don't know. He would get probably his biggest payday against somebody like a David Benavidez. And I get that Terence Crawford wants to make history, and this is a way to make history. He would win another title, although It would be an interim title, I believe, against David Benavidez, the WBC title. But he would force a mandatory fight with Canelo Alvarez.
Canelo.
And when you think about it, at 154, if he wants to be undisputed in either one of those weight classes, whether it's 154 or 168, he's probably going to have to take a stepping stone fight in order to force the fight to happen. Tim Tszyu would be an opponent at 154 that he would need to face in order to become undisputed at 154, because he's not going to get it with one shot facing Jermell Charlo. And he's not going to get the opportunity to go straight to Canelo. It just simply doesn't work like that. But he could force a Canelo fight if he were to move up. So it'll be interesting, man. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. On top of that, if he were to go this route, face David Benavidez, beat Benavidez, this is all contingent on Benavidez beating Bubu Andrade on November 25th.
And it's contingent upon Terence Crawford also beating Errol Spence in a rematch. We all know that. Yeah. We're just talking about this in theoretical, hypothetical terms.
Yeah. So, I mean, if that's the case, if that does happen, all those chips fall as they fall that way and he handles business, then if Canelo says no to him, then you can start purely saying like, well, Canelo might be ducking the smoke, because that'd be his mandatory. But would have definitely established himself as a bigger name by then with those two fights. A rematch with Spence, David Benavidez, that should have elevated his profile, hopefully. And then Canelo can't say anything. Because that's his mandatory. He needs to fight him. So then the Bud fans could really say he's ducking him at that point in time. But we're way off. We're far off from that being a possibility. Because all accounts, from what we've gotten from some Terence Crawford fans, specifically Terence Best videos, he says Bud would be crazy to fight David Benavidez. He said he would lose that fight as well. So I'm interested in how other Bud fans feel about that. David Benavidez, Terence Bud Crawford, who would win? It's hypothetical. It's nowhere near happening.
I'm not going to go there in terms of who would actually win the fight. At this point, it's just interesting that David Benavidez will be willing. And now that it's actually a path for Terence Crawford to get Canelo Alvarez in the ring, of course, after he fights Errol Spence in the rematch. I thought that was something of significance and something to note for the people that follow the channel, and hopefully we'll get the opportunity to hear from them in the comment section. Don't forget to hate, like, comment, and subscribe. This is the Angry Man Podcast and Sports Media, and we are out.